Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City of Alameda Transportation Commission meeting for Wednesday, May 28th, 2025. We will begin with the roll call. Lisa Foster.
Commissioner Dara Abrams.
Here.
Commissioner Kim.
Here.
Commissioner Gloin.
Present.
Chair Whitesey.
Here.
Vice Chair Sutham Thira. Present. Commissioner Johnson is absent at the moment, and Commissioner Noctegal cannot make it. She is absent.
Okay, seeing that we have quorum, we will continue. Next item on the agenda, any agenda changes? Any proposed agenda changes from commissioners? Seeing none, we will move on to item number 3, staff communications. Take it away, Lisa Foster.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Whitesey and commissioners. As Chair Whitesey said, I'm Lisa Foster, Transportation Planning Manager. We've had a couple of council items on items reviewed by the Transportation Commission recently. And on May 5th and 13th, the City Council held budget workshops to provide direction on the fiscal year 2025 to 2027 budget proposals. There wasn't any major changes given for direction for the capital improvement plan draft that you all reviewed. The City Council also authorized replacing the Ralph Appizzatto Memorial Parkway bus lanes project with 3 transit-focused multimodal projects for the named Measure BB project. So that is next going to the AC Transit Board of Directors. Our next Transportation Commission meeting is August 27th and then September 24th. And then for public events coming up, May 31st in a few days is an urban cycling workshop. That'll be at the main library. And then on June 6th, we have the Transportation 101 and Clipper cards for seniors at the Mastic Senior Center. For project updates, July will be a big month for the Oakland Alameda Water Shuttle. The Water Shuttle team is planning to add a 6th day of service along with other service expansions. And we will also celebrate the 1-year anniversary and expect to celebrate the 100,000th passenger. So keep an eye out for communications about those. We had a successful bike month. The city hosted the Alameda Bike Festival. We had great attendance. It was on April 26th. I guess that was, maybe I mentioned that at the last meeting we had. Bike to School Day and Bike to Wherever Day were successes as well. And the Alameda Transportation Management Association had a good after party out on the at Radium Runway. On May 22nd, the Alameda County Transportation Commission approved their 2026 comprehensive investment plan that has funding for 4 city projects. Funding for an additional 2 years of service for the Oakland Alameda Water Shuttle. Funding for Neighborhood Greenway major crossings, $2 million for that. Some money for the Willie Stargell Complete Street Corridor project that you guys have reviewed, and funding for a FEMA brick match for the Doolittle Drive State Route 61 and Bay Farm Island project. FEMA has recently ended their brick program, but the city is still advancing this project and looking for a new funding plan. So, on Central Avenue, as you all know, construction is underway. There are more details on the web page and in the written staff communications. Public Works has continued to refine the signals along the Ralph Appizzatto Memorial Parkway with the Cross Alameda Trail. Although, the project was substantially completed last year, they are continuing to tweak. They added new bicycle detection indicators at a few intersections and a new protected left turn phase at Atlantic and Wilma Chan. This allowing for a longer green right turn phase arrow for the eastbound Atlantic traffic, which was a big source of frustration when the signal upgrades first went into place for drivers. So that should improve things there. Grand Street construction has started just from Shoreline Ave to Otis Drive. And Neighborhood greenways, as I think you know, we're looking forward to late summer for construction for Pacific Avenue from Lafayette to Oak. And I'm going to stop there. There is more in the written staff communications for your review. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lisa. And just wanted a roll call to update that Commissioner Johnson is present as well. Let's move on to non-agenda public comments. So these are public comments on things not currently on the agenda. Do we have any slips or virtual public comments, non-agenda items?
If you would like to make a comment on Zoom, please raise your hand. I see no hands raised and no speaker slips in the studio.
Okay, let's move on to item number 5, the consent calendar. 5A, they move to approve the draft minutes of the April 30th, 2025 Transportation Commission meeting. Everyone have a chance to review the minutes. Any suggested revisions, any changes?
So
Go
no
ahead.
changes for me, but if I may just say that the minutes included a commissioner communication from me regarding unpermitted bollards on Webster Street, and I just wanted to thank city staff and the business for removing those since then. So Webster Street is now accessible to people in wheelchairs and pushing strollers again.
Great.
So
And actually, that does bring up a point just for new commissioners. So typically, city staff has, the minutes don't necessarily put in all our comments, but if any particular commissioner wants a comment they made during a meeting to be highlighted in the written portion of the minutes, they can actually ask for that. I've done that once or twice when I thought I was very clever. So if you want to do that, you can definitely do that as well. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the draft minutes?
We can note that Commissioner Gloin was absent.
So you should excuse yourself. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move to approve.
Any second?
A second?
All in favor of the motion to approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And any abstentions?
Abstain.
Okay, so Commissioner Klein abstains. Motion otherwise carries unanimously. Let's move on to agenda item number 6, regular agenda items. This is a discussion item. This is to receive an update on Caltrans State Route 61, Otis Drive, Doolittle Drive, Broadway Preventative Maintenance Project, and future project for Otis Drive from Broadway to the Bay Farm Island Bridge. Again, this is a discussion item, and believe we will be led off with Lisa Foster. Take it away, Lisa.
Good evening again. I am just going to give a quick introduction to this presentation, which will mostly be given by our friends at Caltrans. So I wanted to appreciate Ron Kia Aina and Devinder Singh for being here from Caltrans tonight for their State Route 61, Otis Drive, Doolittle Drive, Broadway Capital Preventative Maintenance Project. So the city, can you move to the first slide? Oh, here, I can do it. Okay. The City of Alameda has been advocating for major safety improvements to be included with this project since 2020, and we appreciate that Caltrans is currently working with us to incorporate some safety improvements at key intersections. And you'll hear more about that from Ron, so thank you for that. This is a big project. It includes more parts of Route 61, not all in Alameda, but one key part that we've all been talking about a lot is the portion that's on Otis Drive. So I wanted to give a little introduction and kind of orient you to what we're talking about here. This is Otis Drive from Bay Farm Bridge to Broadway, and it is just over half a mile residential fronting corridor. Just under a quarter of it is fronting Crucy Park, which connects to Otis School and is home to school and recreational programs. You can see there it has 4 baseball diamonds, so there's a lot of baseball there. And the school's right behind it. It's a 4-lane roadway with uncontrolled crossings at key pedestrian and bicyclist access points. In the city of Alameda street classifications, it is a neighborhood connector, which is like an arterial. It's a transit route and it's a truck route. And what Caltrans found with their study is it has a very high auto volumes, higher than other neighborhood connector streets in Alameda. It's a high injury corridor in the City of Alameda Vision Zero Action Plan. It is on the Alameda County Transportation Commission's new proactive safety network, which is a network of streets where, quote, vulnerable users may be exposed to roadway conditions associated with fatal and severe injury collisions. So they used roadway characteristics and basically land use characteristics to identify whether vulnerable users are present. Both this segment of Otis and Doolittle are on this network. The active transportation plan for the city of Alameda has 2 neighborhood greenway connections on this portion of Otis, including a crossing at Mound Street. That neighborhood greenway will, connect the southern part of the city and a neighborhood area across to Crucy Park and Otis Elementary, and then going further north on the Versailles neighborhood greenway. And then Bayview Drive is also slated to be a neighborhood greenway in the 2030 backbone network. And so we're looking at trying to connect Bayview and Otis to heading east toward the bike bridge, the Bay Farm Island bike bridge. So just a few city highlights for our takes on these projects before Ron takes over. For the CAP-M maintenance project, Caltrans will tell us more about some pedestrian safety improvements at a few key intersections, and we really appreciate that. And we also wanted to highlight that they included significant bikeway improvements on Doolittle Drive, which we are happy to see as well. And then the future kind of road diet project that is slated to be programmed in 2028 to start work. I wanted to mention that the city has recommended studying a few specific design concept alternatives, not just one, and one of them is not necessarily a road diet, because we do see high auto volumes here. We want to think creatively about how to address that while addressing the significant pedestrian and bicyclist safety and connectivity concerns that we have. And then our current city priorities are safety for pedestrians and bicyclists crossing Otis Drive, and that having a widened sidewalk and path east of Bayview Drive for this project. And now I will pass to Ron Kia-Aina, and thank you for letting me take some extra time for this.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ron Kia-Aina. I'm with Caltrans. I'm a regional project manager there. And I'd like to thank the Commission for allowing me to come back and present or give an update on our CAP-M project. We were last here, I think, in August of last year, and we heard the feedback from the Commission as well as the public on our project. Since then, we've had multiple meetings with city staff, and most recently, we met this week with Mayor Ashcraft, and we want you all to know that we have heard your feedback, and we've made several modifications as a result of your concerns. And I will cover these as part of my presentation tonight. Let's see. This way? Okay. So our project is 5 miles long and starts at the southern end. At Route 112, which is at the very bottom of the red. And it goes along Doolittle Drive through the cities of San Leandro, Oakland, and then finally Alameda at Harbor Bay Parkway, where then it crosses over to Otis Drive and then along Broadway where it connects or stops at Encinal. The city streets that are affected in the city of Alameda are Broadway, Otis, and Doolittle Drive. So the purpose of the project is to preserve and extend the life of the existing pavement, improve ride quality, and enhance traffic safety within the corridor. The scope includes pavement rehabilitation, drainage system rehabilitation, guardrail, and curb ramp upgrades. The project is first and foremost a pavement preservation project. The purpose is to repair the pavement. The further the pavement preservation improvements are delayed, there will be more damage that will occur and more extensive repairs at higher cost, and higher costs will be required. So it's important that the work proceed in an expeditious manner as possible. The project does not change the lane configurations. The number of traffic lanes remain the same as before the project, as the same as after the project. The project does not add any roadway capacity, nor does it reduce the roadway capacity. And again, the purpose of the project is to fix the pavement. And the pavement design life will be about 10 years of rehabilitation, and essentially it's to repair failed areas and as well as resurface the entire road. We would grind off about 3 inches of pavement and replace 3 inches of pavement. As part of this pavement preservation project, we're incorporating complete streets elements, such as bike and pedestrian safety improvements where feasible. The first revision, based on the feedback that we received, is to add the median refuge islands in addition to the already proposed RRFBs, or rapid rectangular flashing beacons, safety lighting, and high visibility striping at the Mound and Versailles crosswalks at Otis Drive. The second revision is to add curb bulb outs at Bayview Street to shorten the crossing distance for bikes and pedestrians. Other features of the project would be to add additional signs, roadside delineators, guardrail delineators, enhanced high visibility striping throughout the entire 5-mile project length, upgrade accessible pedestrian signal heads and safety lighting where feasible. And the third revision that we've added based on the feedback we've received is to install Class 4 bike lanes for most of Doolittle Drive. And that covers starting at 112 at Davis Street in San Leandro all the way to Island Drive in Alameda. It's not entirely Class 4, but most of it is Class 4, or if in areas that aren't Class 4, there is a Class 1 bike lane that kind of is a replacement for that. And in addition, the project includes other safety improvements such as flexible post delineators, guardrail upgrades, flashing beacons at curve warning signs, and other guardrail upgrades in the city of Oakland. Oh, this is the other presentation. Do we have the one I emailed?
New one? Try going to the next slide. I think I noticed this in the
okay.
new one.
Or can't go forward. Yes, this is the right one. Yeah. Okay. So this is an example. This is a picture of Broadway, where it's an existing picture that shows typical RRFB installation that's already in use. On the left-hand side, you see the street lighting with the rapid rectangular flashing beacon when a pedestrian's at the crosswalk. They activate it with the push button, and they can cross, and it's flashing on both sides. And this would be the same thing that would be installed at Mound and Versailles. And as you can see here, just like this intersection, there's 2 sets, one on this crosswalk and then on the far crosswalk as well. Okay. Oop, I had an example of a median refuge island, but I don't know if we still have that. If not, I can come, I'll just describe it. I had a slide of an example of the median refuge islands, just as an example of what would be constructed at Otis and Mound and Versailles. It was just a representative. The exact configuration still needs to be designed, and we would consult with the city staff to make sure that it was acceptable. But it would essentially provide a buffer and separate the 2 lanes from traffic in one side with a 6-foot median island, and then 2 lanes on the other side. We would be essentially pushing traffic out to make room for a median refuge in the middle. And these would be at 4 locations, 2 at Mound and 2 at Versailles. Stuck.
Not advancing.
Okay, there we go. And this is an example of what the Class 4 bike lane would look like on Doolittle Drive between Harbor Bay Parkway and Island Drive. It shows a 2-foot buffer with a vertical channelizer and a 5-foot minimum bike lane. And I'm going to I'm going to change the order a little bit here. I'm going to start, I guess, backwards. So starting at Harbor Bay Parkway, and to the right is Island Drive. This is essentially what it's hard to see, but this is a Class 4 bike lane that starts at Harbor Bay and goes all the way to Island Drive as we continue, further to the east. And then at that point it stops. Most cyclists would use the pedestrian bridge to cross over. And then continuing on over the pedestrian bridge at Fernside here. The striping will be essentially the same as it is now, that you see. It'll just be refreshed after the pavement is resurfaced. However, at this intersection here, this is Bayview Drive, and then this is High Street down here. So at this location, there'll be curb bulb outs into Bayview to reduce this crossing distance here. That's one of the additions that we're adding as a result of the feedback we've received. And continuing further on, it's hard to see, but I think this is Mound right here. Yeah, Mound, and this is Versailles. And so this is the area we would have a median refuge here, a median refuge here, and a median refuge here, and one more over here. And each of those will have an RRFB to warn motorists when a pedestrian's in the crosswalk, as well as the street lights.
Ron, I think I have found the new presentation. Would you like us to switch over?
Okay, sure.
Okay. Apologies for that.
No problem.
Lots of moving pieces. I can PDF it. Do you want to just continue, or do you want me to PDF it and then get it up?
Sure, you can,
Okay,
you PDF
sure.
is fine.
Working, or do I need to PDF it?
Okay, I'll jump forward. Back to the median island refuge. So this is an example of what it could look like, where you have 2 lanes, a median area that pedestrians could take refuge in, and 2 lanes to cross on the other side. Both will have RRFBs. At a minimum, there would be like a pedestrian push button in the middle. We still need to iron out the details if an RRFB would be placed in the middle. But essentially, this is what it would look like. Other variations could be like a curb that's in front over here, and this might need to be set back a little bit to put a curb in front. But those details need to be worked out in the future. Let's see. And this is the same, there's no change in this picture from Harbor Bay to Island Drive and to Bayview. And as I was mentioning at Mound and Versailles, we would be placing the median refuge islands here, 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 and here. Our concern was truck turning. And we may need to have a restriction for vehicles longer than 40 feet in length as they turn left from, say, from Mound Street, in case to avoid clipping the pedestrian refuge area, just based on the vehicle length. So left turns here, left turns here, just to make sure that that's safe. The same thing for Versailles, left turns. And this is Otis here, and then this main one is Broadway. And on Broadway, the pavement will be restriped exactly as it is now, which features 1 lane in each direction, a 2-way turning lane, and Class 2 bike lanes. And this is the end at Encinal, right here. So the project funding was allocated by the CTC in mid-May, and we're on target to advertise the contract for bids, and we anticipate construction award of the contract by September, and construction would start sometime in January 2026 and end in approximately April 2027. We'll be providing outreach to the public as we get closer to the beginning of the construction, and examples of that would include press releases or a newsletter and a project website that details, usually it would detail lane closure information. The project is funded out of the State Highway Operations and Protection Program, otherwise known as the SHOP. Total cost of about $23 million. And as I mentioned earlier, the project is implementing as much bike and pedestrian safety improvements as is feasible for this type of project, this pavement preservation project. And as I mentioned earlier, it includes this type of improvements would be the RRFBs with lighting, the median refuge islands, the curb bulb outs, and the Class 4 bike lanes. However, the project can't accommodate significant changes in roadway configuration or in change in roadway uses as that would happen if we were to do a roadway diet such as this. And this is a schematic of what a roadway diet would look like between Broadway and Fernside. And that's primarily because of the high traffic volumes on Otis Drive now, reducing the lanes from 4 lanes to 2 lanes, essentially having the capacity, would shift traffic to other streets. It would likely require removal of parking on one side of Otis. And there are several possible alternatives and roadway configurations that could be done. All of this requires a longer public engagement process and environmental process, and along with limited funding and funding deadlines. We decided instead that it's more beneficial if this 0.6 mile segment would be addressed as a separate future road diet or otherwise a traffic calming project. And this project would be programmed in the 2028 shop, and so in 2028 we would start the environmental phase of the project. And the project would be to modify Otis Drive from 4 lanes to 3 lanes, 1 lane in each direction, 2-way median left turn, and bike lanes, and as well as other alternatives that the city would like to study and forwarded to us already. And the purpose would be to improve bicycle access and enhance safety. I mentioned that we would start in the environmental phase in 2028. It would take about 3 years to finish the total of the environmental and design phases, at least for scheduling, and then complete construction in about a year. So it would take about till 2032 to complete the construction phase. And that would be also funded out of the State Highway Operations and Protection Program. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ron. Any clarifying questions of fact about the presentation before we get into discussion? Commissioners? Commissioner Abrams.
Well, first, I just want to say thank you for both of you for coming back here and presenting this. We know Caltrans Bay Area District covers 9 counties, millions of people, so thank you for the attention to the city. I only had one clarifying question here, because I just want to be upfront and say that final slide, I think, raises lots of reactions around here, and I know Lisa had hinted that the city wanted to put some specific options on the table for this future study. And well, I don't think that's the main focus of our conversation tonight. If I could just ask Lisa if you wanted to very briefly share the city's proposed options, just so that members of the public seeing that slide can think of that as one of a range of possibilities, even if it's kind of going beyond tonight's conversation.
So actually, if we're going to do that, that's fine. We should do it during discussion, though, because we should focus. Clarifying questions should be specifically on what was presented here today, and then we can certainly move to that as part of our discussion. Any other clarifying questions of fact on the current presentation?
Can I
Mr. Kim.
rephrase that as a clarifying question? It's
Why-
your
why don't we-
discretion.
if it's
Of course.
Please, let's move to discussion.
Okay.
Commissioner Kim.
Question about the 2028 SHOP program, and just understanding is, I guess if you are trying to get in the SHOP program, is that like a sure thing, or is that something that may not happen?
Well, we have to first complete a planning document, a project initiation document to scope the project and identify the costs. But our intention is to program it at that time. So I would say, yes, it's as sure a thing as we can do, because we're committing to doing this. But then, it does depend on how the state funding is during that fiscal year. But it is on our priority, and we've targeted to program this project. Yes.
Any other clarifying questions? Commissioner.
Just to follow up on Commissioner Kim's question, if that work was was programmed within the 2028 SHOP program. When would the construction work be completed?
2032, so it would take about, 4 years to be complete. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
3 years to clear it and design it, and about 1 year to construct.
These are clarifying questions, questions of fact from the commissioners. I have a couple real quick ones just to help us understand the project. I believe you referenced that the protected bike lane would be going all the way out to Davis Street in San Leandro. That's within the scope of this project. I just wanted to clarify that's true.
Yes.
Okay.
Class 4 bike lanes, yes, from Davis Street. There are some segments where there's not enough shoulder or not enough roadway width from, say, curb to curb. And in those cases, it does drop down to a Class 2 bike lane, I believe. So it's less than, probably less than 5 feet.
Oh,
But a lot of that segment is covered by a Class 1 bike lane, so there's some overlap, and cyclists can use the Class 1 bike lane. But there is still some small segments. I'm not sure what the total length is, though, but less than half a mile, I think, of the at least 4-mile stretch.
so it sounds like it's fair to say that the vast majority of Davis Street all the way to Island Drive would be.
Yes, will be Class 4.
Thank
yes.
you. Second one, I think just to help us visualize kind of, I don't know, pedestrian safety on the part between Fernside and Broadway, can you give the public a sense of how many stoplights are within that gap? Are there any stoplights within that gap? Are there stop signs? Is there anything?
Well, there's a stoplight at Fernside, one at High Street, and one at Broadway,
Okay,
and then nothing else in between.
good, very helpful. Thank you. Seeing no other clarifying questions, I would open this to any members of the public that would like to make a comment specifically on this item. Do we have any slips or online for?
Yes, we do. If you're interested in speaking online, please raise your hand now so we can get an accurate count. So far, we have 3 on Zoom and 2 in person.
Why don't we take the people in person first?
Perfect. First, I have Maria Piper.
Hi, Maria.
Hello, thank you, everyone. I want to point out one of the things that's really interesting to me about this project, and one is that the first goal of it, the second part of, I forget what the first one is, so apologies for your 3-part one, forgot the first one. Second is to improve its ride quality, and third is to enhance traffic safety. And I think that says a lot. We're focusing on improving the street's ride quality over traffic safety, just based on word prioritization. I understand, we all need to make the dollars stretch as far as possible, and doing things sooner makes them more affordable. And I want to commend what the city of Alameda has done to do a lot with pavement preservation projects and making streets safer, especially streets around schools. So I think what's important about this is that this is not a highway. This is a neighborhood street in common people terms. So surely safety is more important. And when we're looking at how many users there are, what I hear being talked about is how many drivers there are, how many cars there are, not how many actual users of this stretch there are. And I would imagine that if this was a safe street to cross and a safe street to traverse, we would have increased users, and probably in other ways. So I also want to add that, this is an area with high congestion. We've talked about how there are a lot of users who are driving on this section. I was one of those users up until 5 years ago when I got sick of driving and sitting in Otis Drive congestion. And guess what? I got a bike. And now I ride the vast majority of my trips not on Otis Drive. And I think that's something we as a society need to start embracing, is congestion can improve safety overall by making cars drive slower. It can also change and incentivize different behavior, which is what we need in this town. We have been doing so much as a city, you all have been doing so much, staff has been doing so much to change the way we get around. And I just really don't like that we are focusing on keeping the same kind of throughput availability at the expense of what I see as students getting to school, being able to cross the street to get to school. Now, I do also very much appreciate that the pedestrian refuge is there, that you're adding. That's great. Since you've added those, I would say one thing that is very interesting to me is that it looks in the diagrams like going in front of Island Drive to towards Harbor Bay Parkway. You have a bunch of green. That's very expensive, and I don't know who's going to ride on that since bikes aren't supposed to be on the bridge. And last, permissive phasing on Harbor Bay Parkway to Doolittle is extremely dangerous.
Thank you for your comment. Next public comment.
Next, we have Christy Cannon.
Hi, Christy.
Hi. Thank you for hearing me out. I came really to complain about Caltrans. No, sorry, it has no reflection on you personally. I was really pleased to see, just before I came to the meeting, that these changes have happened in the plan. I think they're going to be a big improvement. I actually don't live near Otis. I live on the West End. But I've been affected by Caltrans' work being on the West End, and the next project, which will be the tube, will also be handled by Caltrans. And I have felt like Caltrans doesn't listen to the city, doesn't compromise, doesn't budge. And so I'm kind of torn in getting up here to speak, because I think that's probably still true. At the same time, you've really tried to incorporate some things in response to concerns and complaints. I really echo what the previous speaker said about let's prioritize pedestrian bicycle safety. That's what you all have tried to do. I know the city staff has tried to do that. The council has tried to do that. So stay on top of Caltrans. That's all I ask of you. And the city staff will probably have the onus of that. And I know they're on top of things. So thanks for listening. And I know you have hard work to do, keeping all these projects juggled. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your kind words. Do you have any other in-person comments?
No more in person.
Why don't we move to virtual?
Excellent. First, we have Cindy Johnson.
Hi, Cindy.
Good evening. I'm calling on behalf of Bike Walk Alameda to first say that we're relieved to hear that the late-breaking upgrades to this project, and appreciative of the effort put in by many to make them happen. We so rarely get opportunities to improve safety and access on streets like this. We know this effort will be well rewarded. Secondly, we had some comments about the intersections along Doolittle. We had hoped for improvements across Doolittle Island from the trail on the north side, rather than across Island as shown in the presentation. Regarding the other important intersection on Doolittle, the one at Harbor Bay Parkway, it appears that the bike intersection markings on the south side of Doolittle are missing on the diagram on slide 13 of the presentation. If Caltrans staff can also speak tonight of any planned bike ped safety enhancements for that key intersection, such as a dedicated bike signal or turning prohibitions, for example, which would improve safety and access for that intersection, we'd greatly appreciate it. Finally, we'd like the entire continuous length of Doolittle to have Class 4 bikeways. Where there are exceptions, has making the road lanes narrower or reducing the speed limits been considered? Hopefully those ideas can still be explored. Thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you for your comment. Next comment.
Next, we have Jim Strelo.
Hi, Jim.
Good evening. Number one, I'd like to see the new presentation posted on the website, and that, so that we can see some of those new diagrams. What I'm concerned about, and number one, I'm really pleased how the project is being shown tonight. I am concerned, however, that it's not a fully understood, when it's presented to the public, how you get from the using the existing bike pedestrian bridge, and you cross over the wooden pedestrian walkway bridge to get to the other side of Doolittle. And it should at least be noted or addressed by the city to say what the status of that is. Whose responsibility is it for that wooden walkway bridge, because it's in poor shape. And it's important to understand how the people are supposed to use the existing bike ped bridge to take advantage of these new designs of Doolittle Drive to go out to Davis Street. So I know that it's a kind of a, whose is it? You know, is it the Alameda County's responsibility? Is it somewhat the city's responsibility for that wooden walkway bridge? But it would help people understand how to use this proposal properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strelo. Next public comment.
Next, we have Alice Sunshine.
Hey there.
Mute. Okay. Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, good. Thank you. My name's Alice Sunshine. I'm the president of the Ravens Cove Homeowners Association, which is located at Bayview and Otis. And I want to thank Transportation Coordinator Rochelle Wheeler and Mayor Ezzy Ashcraft for getting Caltrans to include the bulb outs at Otis and Bayview in the upcoming project. I do want to say, though, that our community's concern is not so much the distance to get across the street. It's more the crowding that occurs between pedestrians and cyclists at that corner. The space isn't big enough to accommodate pedestrians, cyclists, and all the dogs being walked across the street there. And the cyclists are coming off the Bay Farm Bridge, often at a pretty good speed, and then they're going through that corner to get towards the Bay Farm Bridge, to go over the bike bridge. And it's really been dangerous. I've done it myself. I've been a pedestrian and a cyclist at that corner, and I've been afraid both times. So I wanted to ask that, oh, and also there is a collection of boxes for traffic control that you have that adds to the squeeze in that space. So a bulb out's a great idea. I hope it's designed within mind to improve the space to keep the pedestrians and the cyclists from crashing into each other. We have a homeowner who lives at that corner, and she often regales us with stories of near crashes and accidents and people screaming at each other at that corner. So the bulb out's a great idea. It just has to be designed to give the space for the two to pass. And our community appreciates you all having us in mind. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any additional public comments?
I see no other hands raised.
Okay, seeing no more public comments, we'll move to commission discussion and questions. Do any commissioners have questions or discussions or rephrasings? Commissioner Dare Abrams, why don't you jump in?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try again with this question. Lisa, could you speak to, you had hinted that the city has some potential scenarios for future consideration.
Thank you. I'd be happy to. So a situation where we have such a residential street, such important pedestrian and bicycle connections with really high auto volumes means that real care and consideration needs to be put into the best configuration for this street. As Mr. Kia Aina was saying, that public process and study, so that the alternatives the city had recommended studying were basically from sort of least to most intrusive or most change from today. We're first keeping the 4 lanes, but having more significant crossing improvements, including a pedestrian hybrid beacon, otherwise called a HAWK, at Mound Street. And then another idea was to have a road diet with 4 to 3 road diet with retaining parking on both sides of the street, but with no bike lanes. And then the other one would be a 4 to 3 road diet with Class 2 bike lanes with parking only on the south side of Otis. The feasibility of these all require study, but these were our suggestions for a place to start. Of course, 2028 gives us some time to see where priorities are in the future and think this through further, but those are what we have suggested. And I will also mention they all Any road dieting would not include the signalized intersections was our suggestion because because those intersections need to move through a fair amount of traffic.
Thank you, Lisa. Commissioner Evans, any follow-ups?
I have a few more questions,
Please.
but I'd like to let others have
Okay.
time as well. So
Any
thank
other
you,
commissioner
Lisa.
questions? Commissioner Kim?
Yeah, I have a direct follow-up to that. So we had talked about medians and bulb outs as part of the current work. Would medians and bulb outs preclude any of the future kind of alternatives that we're looking at?
No. If we need be, we would remove them to change it to the configuration that's done in the follow-up project.
Okay. Any others? No? Other commissioner questions? Commissioner Glenn?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. That's very helpful. You mentioned that a study had been done to assess the volume of traffic on Otis and that it currently supports a relatively high volume of traffic, and that is one of the reasons why keeping the 4 lanes is currently in the plan. During that study, was there any assessment of the speed of the traffic on that section of Otis?
So first, to be clear, we just do monitoring to find out the volumes of traffic on Otis. We didn't do a specific study that accounts for like the turning movements on Otis. So that's the first thing. So it's really more like we just do like a yearly monitoring of traffic data, or a year or every few years, but not specifically a study for that. A specific study would be done if we were to change the roadway configuration, right? So that's when you want to know how much volumes are there, and how the roadway will be affected. If you add volume, or if you add capacity, it will induce more traffic and there'll be more volumes. But if you reduce capacity, where do those volumes go, right? Because there'll be other impacts to other streets. So we didn't do that because we're keeping the roadway exactly the same. So we don't do an in-depth traffic study assessing where the volumes go. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's helpful. Thank you. I was more thinking about speeding on that section, particularly given, as we know, there's a tendency for vehicles to travel faster when there are more lanes, particularly when the lanes are wider and straighter and that sort of thing. But it sounds like we don't have data for that particular question.
It's signed for 25 miles an hour, right? And there are some, I think at least one speed feedback sign that lets the public know how fast they're traveling, in case they're not paying attention. But that's pretty much as low as we can go, a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. There's not too much more we can do to change that. It's largely, up to the public to travel at a safe speed. Yeah, that's it's as low as it's permitted right now. It's 25 miles an hour.
Sure, thank you.
Commissioner Vice Chair Susan Thera.
Thank you, Ron, for being here second time, and thank you to the staff for working and following up with Caltrans and bringing an updated presentation just before the meeting. So just following up on Commissioner Gloin's point and your response is that in terms of you mentioned that it's up to the drivers or the to the drivers to be careful in driving, but I think there is a design configurations. That's what we as transportation experts are supposed to be developing, providing the infrastructure to make the drivers go at a safe speed, right? So in terms of the project itself, I'm seeing this as a phase one, what you're doing as a safety improvement. And then the shop project for 2028 is going to do much more in-depth. But what I'm not clear, I'm in-depth in the sense you're looking at programming for road diet. But what I'm not clear is that as part of the road diet project, and will you be, you will develop the PID document, and as part of that, you will be looking at alternatives.
Yes.
But in terms of the traffic analysis, will you be just focusing only on Otis, or because the traffic is, if it is road diet, then there's the certain volume that's coming down on Otis for this section is going to be diverted to other roads, right? So we want to have a comprehensive look at how the traffic is going to be diverted and which other parallel roads or any intersections or which neighborhoods are going to be impacted, so that everyone is aware in more in a transparent way, and what kind of preventative measures need to be taken, right? So will you be looking at that as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We already did a traffic study when we took an initial look at the road diet, and that's how we knew that there's going to be a lot of impacts, that there's going to be a lot of traffic that has to be diverted, primarily towards the east as they come off from Fernside. If there's too much traffic on Otis, they'd have to divert to the east and then further north after that. But we would do all of those studies during the environmental phase of the project.
I understand it's not new to Caltrans, because this is a state route and it goes through different land use types and different type of neighborhoods, and 61 definitely sees that traverses different kind of land use, and then it gets into Main Street and into the neighborhood, similar to 185 in San Leandro, and as it gets into downtown area, it is different. So, and Caltrans has made more effort to make the sections safer. So, and you have experience, so it is challenging, but you have to listen to the or look at the neighborhood safety and what you are hearing from the public, and we appreciate you are working on that, and we hope to continue in the same path. So,
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson, anything? Commissioner Abrams, I think you had a couple of follow-ups.
Yeah, sure, thank you. I wanted to ask a couple questions at some of the plan slides you came up with. First, on the Broadway segments, where there are the existing Class 2 bike lanes. So I think the Caltrans's project on Encinal, the Encinal portion of State Route 61 has actually been really successful for both drivers and cyclists. One of the features I really like is it has lines painted on both sides of the Class 2 bike lanes, so that people parking kind of have that indication of that they should park close to the curb. And so I'm wondering if that's not it's a feature on some city-owned portions of Broadway, I believe, but not the Caltrans-owned portions of Broadway. And I wonder if that is in the current plans, and if not, if that is something that Caltrans could consider adding stripes for delineating both sides of that Class 2 bike lane.
I'm not familiar with, we can check, but you're saying that as part of we also have a Cap M project that we're wrapping up, or we might have just wrapped up on Encinal Avenue.
Yeah.
And we want to kind of match that striping that for the bike lanes there. Would you want to apply that to Broadway? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Yeah.
just, I see Scott nodding. If there's some, maybe if you want to add any language, I think you know what I'm hopefully hinting at in layman speak, so.
If I may, members of the Transportation Commission, Scott Wickstrom, City Engineer. I think really what we're referring to is you said it quite well, which is basically you have the bike lane. Normally the bike lane, often the striping only delineates between the vehicular and the bike. but you can also stripe the inside edge of that bike lane as well. And that was done on install, so that's the request. I don't recall looking at the plans, that level of detail, whether it's in the plan or not. That's sure. We'll take a look at that.
Great, thank you all for noting that, because it's a small detail. At the same time, those are the cues that I think lead to motorists having, just being aware that they're encroaching on that bike lane. I also wanted to echo the public comment about the, let's see, this is Otis High, and I can never remember that name of the, sorry, it's not Shoreline, the, gotta look it up here. Bayview, thank you. So, and I can also echo that experience of like, there's crowding on the sidewalks. And so, just curious to know if Caltrans has thoughts on, would these bulb outs be at the same grade as the sidewalk, or
Sure.
a step down, or like, are there ways to accommodate the crowding the commenter spoke to?
What we're thinking is to put something like what's called quick curb. So there wouldn't be a widening of the sidewalk and curb ramp. It would remain in its current configuration, but we would create a bulb out with like a quick curb, which is essentially like a curb that just is I don't want to say glued, but basically placed onto the pavement, and then delineates a bulb out. So pedestrians could still stand within it, right, and it's protected by this curb, but you don't have to, say, widen with concrete at the same level as a sidewalk. And this can be done faster, it's cheaper, and it minimizes other, like, for example, in case that traffic signals would need to be relocated, if we were to do like a regular curb bulb out, it would avoid that type of situation, and utility conflicts and traffic signal relocations.
Okay, but it wouldn't, just to confirm I'm following, the ramp down to the auto level would remain?
It would remain
where
the same.
Okay.
It would just ramp down to the pavement surface, and pedestrians would stand on the pavement surface, but it would be within a bulb out area that the new curb would be placed.
Okay. I'm just going to predict as a pedestrian myself that the experience will depend on some different factors of whether people actually want to stand there. So I wonder if our flex posts and vertical features available as options, or ways to at least make it a little more apparent that that's the pedestrian realm rather than
Yeah,
auto realm.
we haven't really spent too much time yet on the detail, but we would work these details out, and we could present it to city staff for review and comment, and collaborate on what the appropriate way to delineate the curb bulb out is. Yeah.
Okay, understood. Thank you. That's it for my detailed ones. I'll bump it back up to the 30,000-foot view and hand it back to others. I just want to speak to a shared interest here. To be frank, this has not been an efficient process. I would hope that if Caltrans and the city are aiming to work together on this additional phase, that it can work from a more collaborative relationship, because at the end of the day, everyone's trying to serve the public here. We're working from limited funds. If I can just kind of put this into the broader context, like right now, Congress is debating the future of the Highway Trust Fund. The decades of what the industry has taken for granted is kind of calling into question, and so I'm addressing these thoughts broadly, but if anything, the need for efficiency, for effectiveness in delivering real public services is growing. And I think everyone collectively is leading towards a better project here. but so much time from city staff, so much time from Caltrans staff working at cross purposes, and to really deliver high-quality public services and to really get into some of these scenarios in depth for a better street. I think this really calls for these two organizations to work together on a more collaborative basis. And, speaking from our role here, I would like to suggest that this body in the city can help provide the right amount of public input, a Goldilocks amount, not too much can be overwhelming in its own way, but I think this project has shown how too little means that, the city and District 4 have been talking past each other for years on this project. And so I'm trying to say this in a forward-looking way of, this particular shop project looks like it will be a net benefit to the residents of Alameda, the travelers of Alameda, although at a substantial cost of staff time along the way. Hopefully it can serve as a better foundation for a more productive and just more efficient use of resources next time, and maybe a template for kind of how to make aspects like complete streets integral to the design, public input, rowing in the same direction as internal engineering constraints. And I think a lot of people in Alameda would like to help make that happen. So thank you again for your time on this project. Thank you for taking very pointed criticism, for looking for ways to make this project work, and thinking ahead to how to make a phasing really serve some larger goals. Thank you.
Your comment. Any other commissioner comments?
Yes.
Commissioner Kim.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to what Commissioner Evans was saying. A lot of this process seemed pretty inefficient in a couple ways, right? And it feels like we're adding on a lot of things onto a project kind of as we are about to award the contract to the project. And it kind of makes me worry a little bit that some of these things aren't going to be completely thought out, right? For example, with what you mentioned with the quick curbs and for the bulb outs, and I'm assuming the medians as well, like it, as Commissioner Darab was saying, like if it doesn't actually feel safe, no one's going to use it. And I would like to, but I don't know if we have the time to kind of fully vet out what that looks like before we actually award the contract and get going. And so I guess I would like to know a little bit more about the schedule. How realistic is this schedule? And do we actually think that we're going to be able to kind of get all this work and feel good about the work before we award the contract?
Yeah, so our intention is to develop a design fairly quickly and reach out to city staff for review and comment, and then we'll collaborate and come up with a final design. And then we would implement that as part of our construction package. Most likely, we would be advertising the project and issue what's called an addendum to change the project plan so that the contractor can bid on that work. So we think all of that can still be done in time without delaying the project schedule.
Commissioner Gwine.
Thank you. I have a couple of specific questions and then one more sort of general comment. The first specific question is, at the very start of the presentation, you mentioned that there were a couple of purposes to the project, and the second one is to improve the ride quality by improving the pavement surface. Is Caltrans also concerned about the ride quality if you are traveling by bike? Or is that out of the scope for Caltrans?
No, we are concerned about the ride quality for bike. Generally, what ride quality means is that the pavement's deteriorating, and so there's potholes and ruts and that sort of thing. So by repaving it, we fix all of that, right? So it'll be much nicer and smoother. And we pave the entire roadway surface, so it includes the shoulders and any bike lane between curb to curb.
Got it. Thank you. And so the bridge between Alameda and Bay Farm Island, the pedestrian bike way across that bridge obviously has a poor quality surface. Is that under Caltrans jurisdiction? Or is that the city?
The steel bridge, is that the one you're, not the wooden bridge?
I'm talking about
is
the
that
wooden
the wooden
bridge.
bridge you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. As far as I know, that's not Caltrans jurisdiction. It's outside of our.
Can I jump in very
Sure.
briefly? We actually had a pretty good discussion on this in a recent commission meeting. I would definitely invite my fellow commissioners, rather than ask staff to rehash that, to review that video, because we actually had a pretty good jurisdiction discussion about that thing, just for your own context.
Okay.
Thank you. And then my final question is, on slide, I think it was 12 in the original presentation, I'm looking at the bike lane on Doolittle, and on the south side of the road there's a bike lane. I forget if it's supposed to be class 2 or class 4. If you are approaching, if you've come off the bridge, you wouldn't be on the road if you were on a bike, because you would have crossed the bridge on the wooden bridge, which would take you either onto the Bay Trail around the north side of Bay Farm Island, or you would go under the road and you would end up on Island Drive. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, if I'm traveling that way by bike, how would I get to the bike lane on the eastbound side of Doolittle once I'm on Bay Farm Island? And I don't know how I would do that.
I'm not sure. I don't know offhand.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a traffic signal. There's a crosswalk there.
There is.
Is that how it is? Yeah.
There is.
I think that's how, at least that's the plan. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you. So, just one more sort of general comment that's not particularly a question, although I'm going to frame it as a question, which is, obviously we've talked a little bit about the sort of trying to align the priorities of the city with the priorities for Caltrans, and obviously a lot of work has been done to try and do that in the planning for this project. I guess as I think about this more generally and much more broadly, State Route 61 is on the island of Alameda. State Route 61 is all residential streets, apart from the short section, I guess, coming out of the tubes. And on Bay Farm Island, it's not in a residential area, really. But again, as I think about it, we've talked about 40-foot trucks, we've talked about 60-foot trucks a little bit, and State Route 61 doesn't go to the industrial areas at Alameda Point. It doesn't go to the industrial areas on Bay Farm Island, on Harbor Bay Parkway. It doesn't quite go to the major commercial area at South Shore. So I guess in a philosophical sense, and this is not really an accusation, it's going to sound facetious, what is the purpose of State Route 61, given that at least within the city of Alameda, these are all residential streets? I don't necessarily expect an answer, but it's just a thought more than a question.
You want us to take it back? Is that what you're saying?
Sorry?
You want us to take it back?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, I think, residents of Alameda would use Otis Drive to go south, right, on Bay Farm Island, and then further probably to 880. And likewise, maybe from Bay Farm Island, they'll go through Alameda to get to the tubes to go to Oakland. So it does serve some regional traffic, but it's not a whole lot, right? It's primarily going to be local traffic. So I would say the function would be to serve both regional and local traffic.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Susan Thera.
Talking about truck traffic, did you guys do truck counts?
Well, we didn't do specific counts. We just, we have the truck data, but since we're not changing the configuration, we didn't weigh too much in our consideration. But our concern with trucks is more about the turning radius, and to make sure that if we put the median refuge there, that trucks aren't gonna, run over it or knock a pole down, like an RFB pole. So that's the main reason we're concerned about trucks.
Is this identified or truck route, designated truck route?
No, not necessarily.
It's not,
I mean,
okay.
from the cross streets, I think trucks are prohibited, but
That's,
it's just, it doesn't necessarily mean trucks. It could be longer vehicles that we just need to be aware of, whether it's school buses or, other types like that have the potential that require a wider radius so that they don't run into the median refuge islands.
so now that we'll be having a bulb out and accommodate more crowding, I mean, based on the comments you have heard. And I'm assuming you will also look at how the truck or the larger vehicle turning radii is going to be.
Oh, yes, for
accommodated,
sure.
right? Okay.
Yes.
And I have just two other questions, actually one other question, because the crowding was discussed, and the bike connection, I think, again, it's been discussed quite a bit. But specifically the connection from Doolittle Drive to the metal bridge, bike ped bridge, that's the connection you need to kind of look at. Or otherwise you had to go further up and then get off at the Harbor Bay Parkway. That's where the signal is, that's where the crossing at this point is. But if you bring the bike lane to Island Drive, and then how will you cross? So, I mean, that intersection needs to be closely looked at. It has a signal, but not for crossing for the bike at that point. So.
We will check
Okay,
into
yeah,
that.
I mean, it's basically the timing. You are receiving a lot of comments in terms of the details at this point, and the details are great, and the modified comments or modified improvements are really addressing the long-standing issues, and I think there was a lot of anxiety amongst the residents, amongst the city staff as well, like when it came to this point, but then it's a relief, but this could have been done a little differently. And that's, I think, expressed by my fellow commissioners as well. But the timing now, from now to your design and then, contract release or the RFP release is very short. And we really hope that you will take all the details into consideration and develop the design and then discuss with the city staff.
We will.
Thank you.
Other commissioner comments? I can be real quick. I think this is a really good project. I think this is a very balanced approach to this. I agree with my fellow commissioners that probably there should have been an efficiency gain through probably a little bit earlier collaboration with the city. I will also say at some fundamental level, we should acknowledge that the process worked in the sense that something was proposed, it was brought to a commission, it was brought to public engagement. That was probably the most critical meeting we've had in the last 3 or 4 years. You guys listened, you suggested revisions. I know personally you worked very closely with city staff. You came back with a significantly improved project. Yeah, it took longer than we want, but we also asked it to take longer because we asked you to go back and make changes. And so I think at some level it's good to acknowledge when, yes, things can be a little slower, and yes, things can be more efficient, but also simultaneously the way that we're supposed to do this as a society worked. That's a good thing. And I think we should actually keep that in mind as an end goal, that even if the process is not perfect, what we got out at the end of this is a much improved project, and it looks like on the horizon, potentially an even better version of this in 2032-ish. So I just want to compliment, I guess, all parties, honestly. I think city staff did a really good job. I think you guys actually did a really good job listening, and I think the public did a great job of being vocal about it, quite frankly. So That is all I have, and I think it's a good project. Any other commission comments? This is just a discussion item, no vote needed. With that, I'm going to close out agenda item. Ron, thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's move to
Thank you.
item number 7, commission communications. Any commissioner communications on transportation issues? Seeing none, I will move to, oh my gosh, this was fast. I will move to adjourn us before 8 o'clock. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning before 8 o'clock, please say aye.
Aye.
Go home. Thank you.